Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are really strapping in for a discussion. It's all about momentum, isn't it?
It really is. Action and that resolute pursuit of, well, spiritual breakthrough.
Right. This isn't about just sitting back waiting passively. We're doing a deep dive today into determined, active faith.
Yeah, the kind of spiritual posture that just refuses to get stuck.
Exactly.
And our mission, it's pretty clear. We're trying to extract those essential, practical nuggets of knowledge. How does real breakthrough actually happen? We're drawing from sources focused on these biblical ideas of like intense perseverance, real concrete action.
Not just thinking about it.
Not just thinking. And crucially, how we overcome those spiritual obstacles that, well, keep us static. We're basically looking for the blueprints.
The blueprints for surging forward, not just moving.
Precisely. Surging.
And we're kicking things off with, I think, one of the most dynamic images of spiritual conquest you can find in the ancient texts. It's that moment David defeats his enemies, and he names the place after what God did right there. We're talking David at Baal Perazim.
Baal Perazim. And the name itself, that's the critical nugget, really. It anchors this whole discussion.
It does.
It literally translates to the master of breakthroughs. So David wins, defeats the Philistines, and immediately says, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me." And here's the image, like a breakthrough of water.
And when you hear that phrase, breakthrough of water, it's not gentle, is it? It's not a meandering stream.
Not at all.
If you think about water breaking through something, it's massive. It sounds like a dam bursting.
Exactly. That's the intensity. Water crashing, unstoppable, overwhelming force, just obliterating barriers.
But okay, if that's the intensity that defines God's power, the master of breakthroughs, doesn't that create a kind of tension?
It absolutely does. And it really raises the central question that's driving this whole deep dive today.
Which is?
If God is defined by this decisive, overwhelming power, this breakthrough force, why do we sometimes live like, well, spiritual driftwood?
Just floating along.
Yeah, passive, floating wherever the current takes us, or maybe just standing still, like we're at a spiritual bus stop, just politely waiting for something to show up.
When God's very nature is this explosive, determined advancement.
Right, that passivity. That's what we're challenging today.
So we're going to examine the evidence from our sources, looking at, 3 key movements for this kind of determined faith?
That's the plan. 3 key movements. First, we'll analyze what we're calling the posture of determination. This is the internal readiness, what's needed just to start the race.
Okay, internal first.
Then second, we'll look at the movement of determination. How does that internal resolve actually translate into external sustained action?
Makes sense. Posture, then movement.
And finally, we'll explore the breaker and the holy surge. This gets into the ultimate source, the mechanism of our breakthrough. And it leads us to a pretty surprising reinterpretation of a specific New Testament verse.
Ooh, intriguing. Okay, let's start with part 1 then. The posture of determination, that internal readiness.
Right. So to get that outward breakthrough, our sources are really insistent. You absolutely need inward resolve first.
It's not just wishing then.
No. This posture, it's a radical adjustment. It's about shaping the internal landscape so that forward movement is even possible.
And Paul gives us a kind of strategic blueprint for this, doesn't he, in Philippians chapter 3?
He does. Philippians 3:14. And think about it. He's writing this from jail, a place where you'd expect someone to be looking backward.
Yeah, dwelling on the past.
But he defines the posture of the advancing believer using these really active verbs. He says, forgetting those things which are behind.
That's the first one.
Reaching forward to those things which are ahead, and then I press toward the goal. That first bit, the forgetting, that's usually the toughest part.
It feels like the biggest hurdle for most people.
It is. It's the great obstacle. We have to consciously forget the past. Because the sources, they identify 2 different kinds of chains that bind us to yesterday.
2 kinds. Okay.
And both of them, importantly, stop our forward momentum just as effectively.
So the first type, I guess that's the obvious one. The chain of past failures.
Exactly. Shame, guilt, regrets. Those things that anchor us.
Right.
They make you constantly look over your shoulder, right? Reliving the mistake, the failure.
And that paralyzes you from seeing today's finish line.
Completely. But then there's a second chain, which is actually more insidious, more subtle.
Which is?
Past successes.
Ah, right. That doesn't sound like a chain at first.
It doesn't, but think about it. We can spend so much time, so much energy, just polishing old trophies, dwelling on the great spiritual strides we once made.
The ministries we used to lead.
Exactly. Or personal victories we already won. We end up mistaking that nostalgia for current effort.
So whether it's the weight of guilt or the weight of like past glory, if you're looking backward, you simply can't run forward.
You can't. And the analogy our sources use for this really drives it home.
What's that?
Imagine trying to run a marathon, right? But you're wearing a backpack filled with bowling balls.
Okay.
Now, those bowling balls, they could be the heavy, dark weight of past mistakes. Or they could be shiny, polished gold trophies you won years ago.
Doesn't matter which.
Doesn't matter if they're ugly or beautiful, they are still excess weight. And they're designed, functionally, to slow the runner down.
Which takes us right to that foundational text you mentioned for this posture, Hebrews 12.1.
Yes. The command there is so precise. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us.
Okay, I think the distinction there between weight and sin, people often miss that or just lump them together, but you're saying it's critical.
For this deep dive, absolutely critical. We often treat them interchangeably, but the sources are really careful here. They separate them based on their spiritual function.
How so?
Well, sin is defined as something that actually breaks fellowship with God. It requires repentance because it actively ensnares you. It traps the runner. It's inherently destructive to the relationship.
Got it. Sin trap.
But a weight. This is interesting. It might not be inherently evil. It might not violate any moral law.
So not technically sinful.
Not necessarily. It's simply excess. Something draining or time-consuming or just unnecessary that slows the runner down.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily stop your standing with God, but it saps your strength, your endurance. It makes the race basically impossible to win.
Wow. Okay. So the test for someone wanting to be determined isn't just, is this sinful?
Right. It's also, is this activity, this habit, this relationship, is it a spiritual liability in the race set before me?
If we're serious about that breakthrough, we have to identify those non-sinful but utterly draining weights we carry.
Especially in modern life.
Exactly. We have to get specific about these modern weights because they often look completely harmless.
Like what? What do the sources point to?
Well, one big one is the constant, overwhelming consumption of, say, anxiety-inducing content or outrage-focused media.
Oh, yeah. Doom scrolling. Right. Binge watching endless news cycles. Scrolling social media just to confirm your outrage. Yeah. It might not technically be a sin in itself, but it can absolutely be a crippling weight.
But okay, how does someone listening draw that line? We're supposed to be informed, right? How do you tell the difference between necessary awareness, keeping up with things, and an actual draining weight? Is it the content itself or just how much?
That's a great question. The sources suggest it's about the emotional return on that consumption and the consequence of the emotional state it leaves you in.
So how it makes you feel and what that feeling does.
Precisely. If the time you spend leaves you agitated or paralyzed with anxiety or bitter, and crucially, if that emotional state then prevents you from doing things like praying or serving or acting in faith,
Then it's crossed the line.
then it has moved from being just information to being a weight. It replaces faith with dread. It drains away the very resolve you need to press forward.
That makes sense. And I guess the same principle applies to emotional baggage, things like bitterness or self-pity, resentment.
Absolutely. Huge spiritual weights. They consume massive amounts of our cognitive and emotional energy, right?
Yeah, constantly replaying things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All while providing zero constructive buildup. It's just energy wasted, looking backward at what should have happened or what someone else did.
And what about relationships? That came up too.
Yes, we have to look at relationships too. We all probably know those connections that are, well, energy sinks, purely transactional sometimes.
They demand constant input.
Constant input, attention, affirmation from you, but they don't really build you up or help move you towards your goal. They might seem innocent enough.
But they're a massive drain.
A massive drain on the limited time and emotional capital you need for sustained determination.
So wrapping up this first part on posture, it really starts with a kind of radical spiritual subtraction.
That's a good way to put it.
If you, the listener, want that Baal Perazim kind of breakthrough, you have to be ruthless. Identify and drop these non-sinful, maybe, but severely draining weights.
You just can't press forward if you're still tied to all that unnecessary excess. The internal prep work has to be done before you can really run the external race effectively.
Right, internal readiness first. Okay, that leads us perfectly into part 2. The movement of determination. taking it external.
Exactly. So we dealt with the internal readiness, the posture. Now we have to transition to the external movement because, internal resolve, it sounds great. It feels good, maybe.
But it's spiritually useless on its own.
Pretty much, yeah. If it doesn't actually translate into sustained, determined action, it doesn't achieve anything.
And this is where we hit that really blunt assessment from James in the New Testament, right?
James 1.22, it's such a powerful command, just cut straight through any apathy.
Yeah.
But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves.
That phrase, deceiving yourselves, that really jumps out.
It's the key, I think, to understanding the danger of just being passive spiritually. James defines spiritual agreement without action as pure self-deception.
So you can agree with it, even get excited about the path to breakthrough.
Enthuse about it. But if you do nothing, the sources say you're essentially just fooling yourself into thinking you're making progress.
It's that classic gym member illustration we touched on. Let's flesh that out a bit more.
Yeah, it works well here. Yeah. So the person joins the gym, right? Great enthusiasm.
He buys all the gear, looks the part.
Exactly. High-end workout clothes, maybe posts selfies, updates their status about their new healthy lifestyle.
But they never actually engage the mechanism of change?
Never. They never lift a dumbbell, never hit the treadmill consistently. They look ready, they sound ready, but they achieve zero functional change, no physical breakthrough.
That appearance of readiness is just self-deception.
It is, and that kind of non-moving passive spirituality. That's what the sources label driftwood faith.
Driftwood faith.
It's purely reactive. Remember Paul warning about being tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine?
Yeah, in Ephesians.
That's driftwood. It's carried by the current. It goes wherever the wind and waves happen to take it. It has no internal motor, no rudder, no set destination.
Whereas determined faith, that's the opposite. It's proactive.
Completely proactive. It's steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, like 1 Corinthians 15.58 says.
So it doesn't float, it drives.
It drives. It doesn't wait to be moved. It advances, it builds, it presses forward. It's anchored in certainty. It's the total antithesis of spiritual passivity.
Okay, so to give people listening some real, actionable mental models for this determined movement, the sources point to some key Old Testament figures, right? Blueprints, you called them?
Yes, several crucial blueprints. Figures who showed this kind of unflinching persistence, even when things looked impossible or distractions were overwhelming. We should probably dig into these.
Definitely. Let's start with Nehemiah. You described him as the master of resisting distraction. His focus was impenetrable.
Right. His determination wasn't just about, stacking bricks to build the wall. It was equally about protecting the work itself from being interrupted.
And his enemies, Sanballat and Tobiah, they figured that out.
They did. They realized they couldn't really defeat him by attacking the wall directly, so they tried to defeat him by luring him away from it. They invited him down to negotiate on the plain of Ono. And this is crucial. The distraction was cleverly wrapped up. It looked like diplomacy, maybe good politics.
So for someone listening today, their wall might not be physical bricks. It could be a major life goal, right? A ministry, writing a book, a family mission.
Absolutely.
So what kind of modern distractions are like Nehemiah's enemies trying to lure him off the wall? Are they usually disguised as good things too?
Very often, yes. The sources confirm the most dangerous distractions often show up looking urgent or even good. They're just not the great work God has actually called you to.
Can you give an example?
Sure. It could be getting endlessly sucked into online debates about theology, maybe feeling very righteous about it.
Instead of actually serving people.
Instead of actively serving the poor in your community.
Yeah.
Or maybe overcommitting yourself to lots of minor low-impact tasks that eat up all your energy.
Leaving nothing for the big thing.
Right. Preventing you from tackling the one major project you know you're called to do.
And Nehemiah's response is just the gold standard for focus.
Isn't it? He sends back that iconic message. I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you?
He just got it. If the work stops, the mission fails.
Exactly. Determination means ruthlessly prioritizing that great work over every other competing urgency, no matter how cleverly disguised.
Okay, Nehemiah is about resisting external distraction. Who's next?
Next, let's look at Daniel. He illustrates that determination is also a proactive defense, not just reactive. His resolve was set internally. way before the big crisis hit.
Right. We always focus on Daniel in the lion's den, which is dramatic.
Of course.
But you're saying his real determination showed up much earlier, back in chapter 1.
That's where it started. Daniel 1.8. It says he purposed in his heart not to defile himself with the king's rich food and wine.
That doesn't sound like a huge public crisis, more like a personal, maybe cultural choice.
Exactly. It was a private culinary cultural decision.
Yeah.
But that inner commitment, that's essential. Determination has to be set in place when the pressure is low, not just when it's high.
So he wasn't reacting to a threat from the king at that point.
No, he was guarding his own internal boundary, his devotion to God, his ability to stand firm later in the lion's den. That was just the external proof of a boundary he'd already decided on years before over food and drink.
So the principle is your quiet daily commitments actually define how you'll react in the big crises later.
That's what the sources suggest. They define your grand crisis level reactions.
Okay. Nehemiah, Daniel. Who else?
Joshua, yes. Standing right on the edge of the promised land, facing impossible odds, huge armies, fortified cities.
Must have been terrifying.
Immense pressure. And God doesn't just give him the destination. God gives him the internal equipment needed. Joshua 1.9. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Strong and of good courage? Is there a difference between those two?
There's a nuance there, yes. The sources highlight that the Hebrew word suggests two different kinds of fortitude. Strength, Kazak, often implies the physical or mental power needed for the immediate task, like the ability to execute the next challenging step.
Okay, strength for the now.
But courage, Amets, that seems to be more about the long-term morale-based fortitude, the ability to persist despite fear, despite uncertainty about what lies ahead.
So strength for the immediate action, courage for the long haul.
Got it. And both of them are anchored in that final clause, for the Lord your God is with you. That assurance, that presence, that's what transforms potential fear and dismay into determined forward movement, even when the odds look completely stacked against you.
So you run the race not because you feel stronger than the opposition.
But because your guide, your God, is with you every step.
Powerful. Okay, one more. You mentioned Job.
Job. The ultimate model, perhaps, of unflinching persistence through suffering. His determination was tested literally to the point of destruction.
But the pressure purified him, didn't dissolve his faith.
Exactly. Job 23, verses 10 and 11. It's one of the most powerful statements of determined faith under extreme duress.
What does he say?
He declares, when he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. My foot has held fast to his steps. I have kept his way and not turned aside.
Wow. That's not passive resignation, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess this is happening.
Not at all. It's active clinging. He's clinging to belief even when every external sign, every piece of evidence suggests God has abandoned him.
But how does that kind of determined grit differ from just being, stubborn or maybe stoic?
Good question. Stubbornness often just resists external advice or correction, right? Job wasn't just being stubborn. He was resisting internal collapse.
Okay, and stoicism.
Stoicism tries to suppress or deny emotion. Job clearly didn't do that. He actively wrestled with his pain, his questions, his grief. But through it all, he clung to his commitment to God's way.
So his determination was a choice.
A choice to trust the outcome of the testing process, that he would come forth as gold even while he was still feeling the heat of the fire. He kept moving forward, not by ignoring the pain, but by keeping his foot firmly planted on God's steps.
That kind of internal steadfastness, like we saw with Daniel 2 and Job, that brings us to that image of flint.
Yes, the powerful prophetic image. Isaiah 50.7, the servant of the Lord declares, I have set my face like a flint.
Flint, what does that signify?
Flint is unyielding. It's hard, it's purposeful, it's immovable.
Yeah.
The idea is that the determined believer isn't like soft clay that just collapses under pressure.
Okay.
Flint is the kind of material that when it gets struck by external force, it doesn't crumble. Instead,
It creates spark.
he creates a spark of conviction, of illumination. You actually let the resistance fire your resolve, not extinguish it.
And this resolve, we see it perfectly in Jesus.
Perfectly. Luke 9.51. It records that when the time was approaching for him to be taken up to heaven, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem.
Steadfastly set his face.
That phrase translates right back to that Isaiah image. He set his face like flint. That determination meant facing the cross, despising the shame, enduring the whole race set before him with just unyielding purpose.
So these blueprints, Nehemiah, Daniel, Joshua, Job, Jesus, they really show us the mandate for determined faith. It's not just intellectual belief.
Not at all. It actively resists distraction. It establishes commitment proactively. It holds fast during suffering, and it presses on relentlessly toward the goal. That's the movement.
Okay, posture, movement. Now for part 3, this sounds like where it gets really interesting, the breaker and the holy surge. Right, we've got the internal posture, we've got the necessity of external movement, but now we need to talk about the ultimate source, the mechanism of breakthrough itself. And you said this leads us to a verse that's often misunderstood.
Very often, yes. Matthew 11:12, it's one of those paradoxical verses. Jesus says, "And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force."
Yeah, hearing that in English, it definitely sounds negative, like the kingdom is under attack, or maybe being overrun by hostile people, criminals even.
That's the initial impression, absolutely.
Right.
And our sources spend quite a bit of energy urging us to look past that, to dig deeper into the Greek, the linguistic context, the historical setting.
Okay, so this linguistic insight is key for listeners today. You said it changes the whole conversation.
It completely flips it. It shifts the narrative from defense to, well, determined offense. This verse isn't about the kingdom being a victim. It's describing a kind of holy violence of advancement.
Holy violence. Okay, break that down. Let's start with the Greek terms.
Okay, the first key phrase is biazetai, which gets translated as suffers violence. Now, it can have a passive meaning, like something being acted upon.
Which fits the under attack idea.
It does. But the sources strongly emphasize the middle or dynamic voice here. In that sense, it suggests the kingdom is thrusting itself forward forcefully or violently advancing. It's powerfully manifesting itself in the world.
So the kingdom isn't under attack.
It's on the attack. It's breaking into the world forcefully, starting with the ministry of John the Baptist, and now supremely through Jesus himself.
Wow, okay. The kingdom itself is generating the force. So what about the second part? Biastes, translated as the violent. If the force is holy, who are these violent people taking it by force?
Well, if the force is holy, then the biastes, the violent ones, can't be criminals or enemies.
Right.
They have to be the determined ones, the spiritually hungry believers, the ones who grasp the urgency of this kingdom breaking in, and they push through obstacles with zealous, determined effort. They're the ones refusing to be passive bystanders.
Can you give us a kind of modern analogy for this aggressive, determined pursuit? Is it like a competitive athlete straining for the finish line, or more like someone pushing through a crowd to get to something vital? What's the nature of this force?
I think it's more like the second one. It's the nature of desperation and determination meeting an open opportunity. Imagine, say, a burning building. The firefighters have just smashed through a wall, creating an escape route. The barrier is gone.
Right, the way is open.
The violent ones, the biastes, are those people inside who, instead of sitting down politely and waiting their turn, they display this fierce, determined energy needed to scramble through that opening. They ignore their fear, maybe ignore minor scrapes or pain. They seize the opportunity for life.
That determined scrambling, that's the holy violence.
That's the picture. It's force, yes, but it's directed against your own apathy, your own fear, your own comfort zone. It's directed towards seizing the salvation, the kingdom that has suddenly been made accessible.
So the interpretation completely flips the script. Entering the kingdom isn't passive acceptance. It requires this fervent, determined effort.
The zealous breaking through of your own personal barriers, fear, self-pity, spiritual laziness, because the kingdom itself is here. It's accessible. It's urgent.
It must be seized with urgency and zeal.
Exactly. And this idea of aggressive urgency isn't new to the New Testament. It's deeply rooted in the Old Testament too, tying back prophetically to Micah chapter 2.
Micah 2.13, what does that say?
It gives Jesus this incredible title, the one who breaks open, or simply the breaker.
The breaker. Okay, now I see how this connects everything. The whole story of determined faith comes together here.
It does, in basically 3 stages.
What are they?
First, you have the barrier. That's sin, fear, spiritual death, passivity, whatever keeps humanity locked out or stuck.
Right, the obstacle.
Second, you have the breaker. That's Jesus. He comes and smashes the gate open. He makes the kingdom accessible through his life, death, resurrection. He performs the ultimate Baal parism for all of us.
The master of breakthroughs breaks through the ultimate barrier.
Precisely. And then third, you have the surge.
The surge.
That's the response. It's the desperate, determined people, the biastes from Matthew 11, who see that the gate is down, the way is open, and they rush in. They refuse to wait politely or hesitate. They seize the now accessible kingdom with total urgency.
So that determination is the holy violence. It's a fierce resolve against my own inertia, my own complacency.
Yes. And it has to match the urgency of the kingdom itself bursting in, like David's breakthrough of water. The gate is down.
And the only acceptable response is to run, to press in.
To run, to press, to seize the opportunity with unyielding zeal. It's a call to just abandon that passive bus stop mentality immediately and join the rush.
And this determination, this holy violence, it's directed internally against my own apathy.
Internally and vertically. It's urgency focused on reclaiming ground in your own life, overcoming your own passivity, and pressing into the breakthrough that Christ, the breaker, has already won and made available.
Wow. Okay. That reframes Matthew 11.12 completely. Powerful stuff. Let's move into the final part then. Practical breakthrough and the final charge. This has been incredibly deep. We've looked at the spiritual mechanics, the internal requirements for determined faith. So let's make it really practical. What does this look like for someone listening right now who feels ready to transition from passive waiting to determined advancement, maybe starting this week?
Okay, yeah, let's bring it down to action. Our sources essentially give us 4 clear action points. Think of it as a mandate for immediate determined application.
4 points. Okay, what's the first one?
First, and this is foundational for setting that posture we talked about, run forward daily.
Run forward daily, like the Philippians mandate.
Exactly. Put Philippians 3 into practice every single day. You have to consciously choose to forget the past. Doesn't matter if it's failures or past glories holding you back.
Let it go.
Let it go. And actively lay aside every weight. Define today's race by today's effort, not yesterday's results. Treat every sunrise like a fresh starting line.
Okay, run forward daily. Got it. Number 2.
Second, set your face like flint.
The Isaiah image. Resilience.
Internal resilience, yes, based on Isaiah 50.7. This means actively cultivating an unwavering, unyielding purpose. You know that external pressures will come, trials, internal resistance. It's going to hit.
It's inevitable.
So when it does, you choose to let that force spark conviction in you, not cause you to collapse. You stay purposeful, unmovable, fiercely focused on the goal, like Nehemiah on that wall.
Don't let pressure crumble you, let it spark you.
Okay, third point.
Third is the direct action against self-deception. Don't just hear.
James 1.22 in practice.
Exactly. You absolutely must actively translate what you believe into tangible, measurable action. If you truly believe this stuff,
It has to show up somewhere.
it has to result in doing. Whether that's establishing a dedicated discipline of prayer you didn't have before, or a new commitment to actually serve your community, maybe becoming more generous or actively witnessing when you were silent. Faith that just stays theoretical in your head, that's the self-deception James warns about. It generates zero forward movement.
Don't just hear. Okay. And the final point.
Finally, the culmination, the call to determined action. Join the holy surge.
Back to Matthew 11 and Micah 2.
Yes. Recognize the reality. The breaker has already smashed the gate wide open. The breakthrough isn't something you're waiting for God to maybe initiate. It's accessible right now.
So the responsibility shifts to me.
The responsibility is on you to act with the necessary urgency and zeal. Attack your own spiritual apathy. Demand of yourself that you run, press, and seize the kingdom opportunity that is right here, right now, available to you.
Run forward daily. Set your face like flint. Don't just hear, and join the holy surge. 4 clear actions.
And underpinning all of this, every single step of this determined pursuit, there's this ultimate assurance. It's the promise that empowers the perseverance. It's 1 Corinthians 15.58 again.
Remind us what that says.
Be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
That assurance is so key, isn't it? Your labor is not in vain.
It's everything. It means every step forward you take, every single act of determined faith, every time you refuse to be distracted or weighed down, it all has lasting spiritual value.
None of it is wasted. None is pointless.
None of it. The breakthrough is certain for those who determine to press into it, because the breaker has already gone before us.
So we've really drawn a sharp contrast today. Passive faith, like someone just standing at the spiritual bus stop, politely waiting,
hoping the right bus eventually shows up.
Versus determined faith, that holy surge, running through the broken gate because the opportunity is now, and maybe the time is short.
Exactly. And that leads us right to the critical questions you, the listener, need to use to assess your own posture today. right now.
Okay, let's hear them.
If you are genuinely serious about achieving breakthrough, then ask yourself, what specific weight? Maybe it's excess baggage, maybe a draining relationship, maybe that debilitating habit of self-pity, or that endless anxious news consumption. What weight must you lay aside starting today to run this race with real endurance?
Be specific. Identify the weight. Okay, what else?
And second, what comfort or what distraction, no matter how good or innocent it seems on the surface, is keeping you standing still when the breaker has already smashed the gate wide open for you?
If the kingdom is accessible through this zealous determination, what small, comfortable, maybe even respectable apathy are you clinging to that's actually paralyzing you?
Yeah. What's keeping you from joining the surge?
Powerful questions to sit with.
This whole concept of determination, it's rooted in that unwavering commitment, right?
Yeah.
A face set like flint. We've seen these rigorous models in the Old Testament, Nehemiah prioritizing, Daniel purposing, Joshua being courageous, Job holding fast.
And the clear New Testament mandate to press on.
Absolutely. So the final provocative thought, the thing for you to carry forward and really wrestle with this week is this.
Okay.
What are the specific measurable actions, not vague intentions, but actual steps that you can take this week to transition, to go from being merely a hearer who nods and agrees with all these principles
To being a doer.
to being a doer who actively advances with determined, holy violence in the race that is set before you?
What specific actions will prove you're joining the surge? That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. Go forth in that determined pursuit.